Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile, Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Thank you, as always, for that introduction. My producer, Mr. Race Hobbs. This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you are tuning us in. Returning today is a favorite person of mine and a favorite guest as well. Denise Stoner has an educational background in business and psychology and is a certified hypnotist specializing in regressive hypnosis. She began her research in hypnosis under Dr. Bob Romack. That was in Denver, Colorado, and they worked together for 5 years on pain control, smoking cessation, and past life regression research. Her hypnosis certification was earned through Hypnosis and Regression Training at the Hypnotic Research Society by Dr. Ronald P. DeVasto, Advanced Forensic Regression Studies through the National Guild of Hypnotists, Incorporated by Dr. Donald J. Marden. Excuse me for one moment. That's good. She holds educational forums, both public and private gatherings for abduction experiencers in her home in Florida, and I've been very honored to be part of that. Her involvement in the UFO field spans well over 40 years. Denise Stoner is proud to have been a part of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, for 25 years now, plus. That includes Experiencer Research Team, ERT, working under and was Assistant Director of Abduction Research to Dr. George Medich. She also held the State Director position of Florida and remains with MUFON as a consultant for the ERT. Denise worked for 8+ years in Denver, Colorado at the Department of Interior, the National Park Service, for the Saudi Arabian team. Their task was to do the planning, design, and construction of the first national park in that country. It is called Asir. The team of 4 won an award from the Park Service for their work. Denise was in charge of a $3 million contract working with the embassies involved with visas and foreign travel, with liaison between the 4 team members and the Saudi requests, protocol, and more. Her retirement, if you want to call it that, from the federal government after spending 12 years with the U.S. Navy doing background investigations for new recruits wanting to enter the nuclear power school, has allowed her to extend her work with UFO research and investigation. Denise has appeared on TV, and including on the Travel Channel, PBS, Weird Florida with Charlie Carlson, and has been a guest on many radio shows and podcasts. Denise is currently moving forward with some exciting new projects, including work she is doing in the field of past lives, involving possible abductions, along with paranormal experiences and how they might all connect in past to present history. Denise Stoner, welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth, my friend.
My friend in return, thank you for inviting me back.
Well, that was the easy part. It's great to see your face and hear you again. And we were talking before we went on, it's so easy to dish on the social network per se, but good Lord, it keeps real friends in contact and is a wonderful way to deepen and make friends. And it just also reminds me how bloody long it's been since we actually saw each other in fully corporeal form.
That is true. That is true.
You co-authored a book with Kathleen Marden some years ago that I was going to have in hand here and hold up, but in fact is on that bookshelf. And I'll just continue. The Abduction Files, a very important contribution to the work as far as I'm concerned, and a book that is rooted not just in your own intellectual curiosity or research and investigation, but in your own lifetime experience. And you are living such an interesting life that I wanted to basically go over it to a degree to find out and have our viewers and listeners find out how you became the person you are, and then start to talk with that person.
All
So
right.
I'm going to begin with a photo that I just love, and this sets the time.
Ah, yes. That's my grandmother and my mom.
Gosh. And where was this picture taken?
This picture was taken just outside Hartford, Connecticut.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you grew up in Connecticut?
I did until I was in high school, and then my dad had been going to school nights and wanted to become a part of the space business. So we moved to California, where he went to work for Aerojet. And that's exactly where Stanton Friedman was working. It was all within the same time frame.
Oh, growing up in Hartford or just outside of Hartford for you?
Just outside of Hartford, you could walk across to this beautiful historic home called Wethersfield.
I, like a lot of readers, I'm still stuck on Mark Twain.
Yes.
Some folks feel certain authors are dated, but probably because they don't read them.
Mhm.
His work is still incredibly funny,
Yes.
absurdly poignant, and very wise. And I wondered, as a kid, and it's completely off subject, but he's had such an impact on my life as a writer and a character. Was it like a regular school trip to go visit his home, or did you and your family visit at any time?
Yes. It was a school trip, but we also went on our own. It was a fantastic home. Just the way he had it arranged, and
Yeah.
just you could tell and get a feeling for what his life was all about just by walking through and having a tour. Yeah.
In reading one of the bios about him, um, to be at a point in your career where money is not an issue, although God knows he
Mhm.
burned through so much of it and was not good with it.
He did.
But to be able to say, I want my house to be just the way I want it, let's build it, and this is the way it's going to be. To be in a house that that was the governing reality that brought it into being, as opposed to most homes, which are built and somebody buys it and somebody else buys it, etc. Big difference. Um,
Yeah. And his
the
became a library, and then some of the things that he wrote about actually took place in a place called the Wethersfield Cove. He would sneak down there and sit on the bank, where long time ago a lot of food and supplies would come through into the cove, and people could pick up their goods. That's not the case any longer, but it was, and he spent a lot of time there, and it's not written about.
Interesting. I just one more thing. I reread last year a book called Innocents Abroad, which is hysterical. It's really one of the ultimately funny travel books ever written. And although it comes from a very different time, uh, I encourage anybody. It's a great book to pack if you're on the road and want to enjoy seeing wherever the hell you are through somebody else's eyes and philosophy. Um, moving on here. Boy, such a wonderfully formally posed shot.
My grandparents and my mom.
Tell us a
Again,
little bit about your mom.
boy, my mom was college educated. She was excellent with math, which I am not. I have math anxiety. She was just so good at it. She worked for a lot of the insurance companies
Wow.
just before she married my dad. And then after she got married, they started their family. I was the first right away. So she gave up her career until years later when she went to work for Fort Carson, the Army base in Colorado Springs.
Your grandmother, maternal grandmother here,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
also had a major impact on your life. Can you tell us a little about her?
Oh, she did. She did. I had a little, I guess you'd call it a guest book, a diary combination that she bought me. And when she thought I needed to know something, she would write something or draw a picture and sign it. And so I learned right away about, using honey versus vinegar. And then she would say, let's see, never be flat, never be sharp, never be flat, always be natural, because I was taking music and she knew I would catch on to that. Uh, she was a school teacher in Scotland. When they came to the United States, her picture still hangs in the old school near Lanark.
How
Um,
wonderful.
when she came here, she was told she was not educated enough to teach school. So it didn't bother her at all. She went to work in now a historic building called Brown Thompson's, great big department store in downtown Hartford, and she was one of the first women buyers managers. So she
Bravo.
absolutely, she did well.
She has a wonderful face, and I note the family resemblance, no question about it.
Oh, thank you.
No,
I always
really.
thought she was a beautiful woman,
Yeah.
and so intelligent. It didn't take long for students and their mothers in California to discover that she could teach, and they would bring the kids over for her to tutor. So all those years later, she was teaching.
How wonderful.
Mom and dad on their wedding day. And this is outside a place called the Severance House. It's one of 3 mansions that stand near Hartford. I think it's West Hartford. And my grandfather was in charge of that complete grounds, the home. There were
Right.
32 rooms, and hiring and firing and rose gardens and vegetable gardens and the lawns. And so we were given the opportunity to stay there all summer every year from the time my mom was little.
Was it a family home or a foundation, or it was a family home?
Family home designed by the National Park Service. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
yeah. So they put together the grounds and the idea of what they wanted. And then my grandfather was hired to see what plants would work. He was a horticulturist.
Oh,
Um, his college degree was in that. And so he just did a fantastic job of that.
your dad obviously was in the service. What did he do before he went in, or maybe just coming from school?
Well, he was raised on a dairy farm, 180 acres that his parents, my other grandparents, um, took care of, and they were one of the first individuals to begin pasteurization from the farm itself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Really quite a family of unique people.
yeah.
Um, this house, the photo all by itself, um, it evokes for me a lot of our houses in childhood. Um, can you tell us a bit about it? I know that the Address is 44 Fenwick Street.
Correct. That's Hartford. And my dad wanted to buy our first home. And of course, they were still trying to get the finances together and figure out how they were going to survive and build a future. And he found this home and took care of anything that needed repair. And that upstairs that you saw the little balcony on, that was my bedroom. And we couldn't get out to it because my sister was an escape artist and and a climber. So out the door she came.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I can just see the ropes hanging down there, and we're making her way someplace else.
Yeah. So, and she was so little. Just, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh, what fun.
Yeah. True.
Now, here we are.
We are on the back lawn of the big house in the summertime. And my parents had just gotten back from a vacation in New York City, and they brought us the animals that you see us holding, our new
Okay, I
stuff.
was about to ask.
Yep. So mine was a lion. I like the idea of him for a protector, but I was
Yeah.
always watching after my sister because you can see me hanging on to her.
What's the age difference between the two of you?
2.5 years.
About the same as my sister.
Ah, okay. Yep. My grandfather. He is my angel. He was the most special individual in my life. Was always there for me. He loved unconditionally, always. And so very, very special person in my life.
Your father's father or your mother's
No.
father?
That's my mom's dad. Yeah.
What was his first name?
His name was Douglas Hunter McLean.
Oh, that's yes, that's not well. That's a name that suggests a certain lineage for sure, and not other ones. Just that pose there. Your grandfather reminds me a little of my father's father, in that a gentleman, cultured, and I was the first grandchild, and it was just, love unlimited. I remember, I wonder how many, adults have memories like this, because they're so precious, of just being in his and grandma's apartment on Lexington Avenue in New York City, and not having anything special to do except stare into each other's eyes and smile.
Yeah.
Grandpa loves me and I love Grandpa. And
you know it, don't you?
Yeah. And the more we kind of move on in life and learn other people's experiences, we realize how beyond, precious moments like that are. And they give us the wherewithal, more than we realize sometimes, to move through difficult times, even to a degree. Now, this house, again, the Park Service commissioned this house to be built not for a specific family, or
yes, for a specific family, the Severances.
Okay, how did they get the Park Service to do this for them? And what a historic, property it is.
It certainly is. I think it was just some of his donations to build certain things for people. For instance, the Bushnell Memorial Theater in Hartford, he contributed a tremendous amount to that. Helped other individuals. He was a very kind man. I met him several times. Most of the time he was in Maine at his home there in the summer while we stayed here. So I think they just somehow managed to get together, and maybe there was a favor in turn, I don't know.
Yeah.
But my nephew was able to go there a year ago, and the Park Service was wanting it to become a historic site, and I think it finally has.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember offhand how many bedrooms are in here?
Oh boy, the maids' rooms were in the back, and I think there were 4 down there. Upstairs was a lot of offices and buildings where Mr. Severance worked, and his wife also did a lot of writing and I can't remember what. I wish I did. And the children, none of them wanted that home.
Oh my goodness.
Not any of them. So my nephew was given a tour of it because he had a history through us. And he called me and he said, "I'm here, and you told me there's a secret passageway. Where is it?" So I remembered. I remembered to get up to like a 4th floor in a tiny little room where they kept all variety of things, but you had to know where that passageway was and the twisted stairway to the top.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh, that's the kind of
Yeah.
memory most of us dream of wanting to have as a kid. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
The interior, because of course I've seen these pictures before, but thinking about pride in workmanship, quality of materials, finishing details, and ultimately it's so not with us anymore. It certainly exists in individuals and I guess certain businesses, but this level of workmanship is just breathtaking.
Yeah, and it's not there anymore. And if you look at the wall underneath the stairway there, you can spot 2 tiny little doorknobs.
Yeah.
Those are restrooms because it became a girls' college, and that's what they did. What it used to be was a garden room for indoor flowers and vases and
Oh
things
my
like that,
gosh.
and on the other side, a phone booth.
Fabulous. Now,
Ah. My sister and I in our home in Wethersfield with our little dog.
what was the occasion?
My mom dressed us.
That's enough of a vacation. And
That would be the occasion. Oh, ballerinas.
yes, yes,
Yeah, I took ballet. My mom made all the costumes.
fabulous.
She was an excellent seamstress. And of course, that was the night we were leaving for the show, and they wanted pictures. So,
Wonderful. And this another picture that so many families,
oh, yes, the snowman.
and that is one good solid snowman
Oh,
there.
it was.
Damn, not going
My
anywhere for a while.
my dad helped us with it. Oh, yeah.
Well, um, everything we've kind of looked at and gone over seems so idyllic, but there was another part of your life that was starting to happen back then, if I remember correctly, and many of our viewers are familiar with experiencers and the abduction phenomena, but amid this an archetypical, a certain kind of New England reality that some of us are familiar with. Wonderful adults there to support you and encourage you in your dreams. What was your first experience with that other area of reality, be it a contact experience, a taken experience, or just an awareness that things were different for you perhaps than they were for some other children?
Yeah, they definitely were. The first memory that I have was the night that my mom had gone to the hospital to give birth to my sister. And that's what triggered my memory. And that is the house that you showed first, the one in Hartford. And I was taken from that upper room. Yes. And I was taken straight. If you went through that door and kept going to the wall, took a left, I was walked right through the wallpaper by a little entity. Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 2.5. And to the left of that home, there's nothing but field. And I think it's still that way because someone that I know went and took that picture for me not too long ago. And the huge craft that I saw that I thought was Humpty Dumpty as a 2.5-year-old was outside that window.
Wow.
Yeah.
While this was happening, and granted, a memory from when you're 2.5 years old, several years later, in a situation that for that young child is brand new, do you remember either feeling panicked or frightened or overwhelmed, or that reality that's so well documented among so many people that have had experiences of almost, isn't this interesting? More lackadaisical, more,
Yes.
This is quirky, but a reality, and you've studied it and you've been involved in so many cases on your own and with Kathleen, where this sensibility comes at a time which is relatively insane given what's happening to you or what you're seeing or what you're perceiving. Are you able to remember whether or not, again, you're 2.5 years old, you have nothing to compare it to. Maybe this is just part of the way life is starting at 2.5. Remember any associations and how, after the fact, you tried to breach it with an adult or not?
I did. Because again, when I first looked at it, I thought it was Humpty Dumpty, but I couldn't figure out why he didn't have a nose, eyes, a mouth. It was just this big glowing thing. And when I showed my grandfather, I remember the fear on his face. He was afraid. He came through to check on me, had been doing the dishes after he cooked our dinner. And I said, "Look, Grandpa, what's Humpty Dumpty doing outside?" And he looked and he said, and he used a Scottish phrase, "We bairn," he would say, "we're going to go upstairs and read your story and get you ready for bed."
Wow.
So he did. And then that was the night. My wallpaper was all nursery rhyme characters. So I was looking for Humpty Dumpty when this little entity walked through to my bed, through the wall and through to my bed. I was not afraid. We were not taught back then to fear strangers, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was a little guy, and wearing a hood and those great big eyes looking at me, and asked me if I would go with him. And he was carrying a tool that had a little light on the end. He had that in one hand, and with the other, he took my hand. We went out to the hall. He used that little tool to touch the wallpaper, and then we walked right through.
Gosh. When you described your grandfather's reaction, that the expression on his face for you reflected fear.
Yeah.
Can you, thinking back now, do you think maybe he knew something about what was going on with you, or it was a fear because this was a completely unknown situation that he was dealing with?
Oh, that's a good question. And thinking back, which I have not in this aspect before, he was in the war, fought in the trenches in World War I. He was wounded and he was sent, it's where they sent them, not to a hospital, but he was sent to a farmer's home where they all took care of him until he recovered. So that happened, but he was never afraid of anything.
Wow.
So if you take that perspective, why would he be afraid to see something unusual? And to want to get me out of the picture, get me upstairs, get me safe.
Right.
What did he know that I didn't? Yeah.
That is a question we'll never have the full answer to, but
Yeah.
based on everything that we've studied about people's reactions in such situations, I wouldn't put it out of the question. And I would like to think that if I had a granddaughter, knowing something about the subject myself, and as a young child, she described this to me, I can't see anything wrong about exactly what he did to redirect your attention. And in a way, had he really reacted, given you cause to react or wonder what he was concerned about, and should you be concerned, there's a certain grace to that because you're helpless. And I'm sure, again, you and Kathy have probably had similar cases that I had working with Bud Hopkins of
Yes.
an adult looking back on a childhood experience where their parent seemingly wouldn't help them. They just stood there. Or an adult reflecting back on an experience with their child when they were young, and that they handled it in a way that set up a dysfunction between them. And that's particularly heartbreaking.
Yes.
Did anything like that occur again for a while, or was that just sort of it for that period of time?
No, often after that. Often. I was told that, well, when we went through the wall, I knew I was in a metallic round situation with a bench that had no nuts, bolts, seams. It just wrapped all the way around. At the far end, I could see other children. And I could see another entity walking with what looked like a clipboard. And the little entity that was with me said, "You'll get to go closer next time. You'll get to meet the others." And then we had to leave. So, no, it happened continuously throughout my life.
Did you intuit that this is something I don't know why exactly, but this is something I think I should keep to myself, or I've got to talk to somebody about this. This is crazy. How did you lean into that?
I told my mom.
Good.
And I said that I'm being visited, and I have a friend, and I was trying to describe a little bit of the situation. And so she was talking to my grandmother, and she said she has a friend. Do you think it's a little invisible friend like kids have? And so I heard that comment. At the same time, I think my parents had been taken while we lived in that house, because my dad flew in a bomber, and he knew planes like crazy. He always took me to, some of the air shows. Even when I was little, I was fascinated with that. I wanted to go
Sure.
with him.
Yeah.
So at one point, they had gone upstairs to bed. They were just lying there talking. We were all upstairs in that home. The 3 bedrooms went straight back. And my dad looked out the window and saw these enormous lights shining in the window. And he said to my mom, "Look, you need to look. It looks to me, if that comes any closer, it's going to hit the home." Now, my dad was the type that would have been on his feet, waking up my grandparents, taking my sister and I, getting us out of there. He did none of that. The next thing he remembered, it was morning. So that's not the norm.
Did your father talk to you about these memories at about that time or later in life?
later in life, he was one of the individuals, and there's a picture somewhere, I'll have to find it, where he was sent. He went to work for a place called Command Sciences in Colorado Springs. Of all the crazy things, they developed one of the first, I can't think of the name of the famous guitar. He had Ovation, that's what it was.
Oh, sure.
Ovation. So they also did all kinds of scientific things, including aerospace. And he was one of the ones sent to Nevada to the tunnels and would stay for 2 weeks and then be sent home. And my dad could keep a secret like nobody else. And through the years, I would say, come on, Dad, tell me something that I can, grasp onto. Tell me. And he would look at me. And then finally, just prior to retirement, he made a statement that I don't know. I wish I could interpret it well. He said it more than once. He was raised very strict Catholic. So when I said to him, Dad, what's going on? Have you seen something out in the desert? I said, what do you do out there? And he said, well, I pack some things up here and I take them and we go to the tunnels. That was all right for him to say that. And I do something with them and we bring them back and then I look at them again. And I said, what are in the boxes? And he looked right at me and he said, no, better question. What would the Pope say? Yeah.
Oh my.
Yep.
That's a way of turning the conversation around.
You bet.
Yeah. A wonderful portrait here.
Yes. Ed was 19. I was 17. And that was our marriage photo. And it was 10 days before he left for Vietnam.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And our daughter, he was home safe, and we were beginning our future together, and that's our little girl, Deanna.
Such a beautiful portrait.
I like that one. Thank you. I was
working. Napping. I was not.
And he did that to me. I worked for National Park Service at the time. It was such a heavy-duty, important job, working for the Saudis. And when I got home, that's what happened. I sat down and I said, "What about dinner, Clunk?"
You want dinner? Go get it. This job, one of a number of fascinating employment experiences that you had. How did it start? I don't think, before we discussed this some years ago, the term national park and Saudi Arabia had never even remotely come together in my mind.
No.
Like most people, I have cartoon images of certain places until they're corrected, and Saudi Arabia is just sand, right? Wrong, of course.
Wrong. Wrong. Well, I had decided I wanted to go to work, and I had graduated from a business college, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go get some interviews. I think it would be a good idea to work for the federal government. I don't know where that came from. I just pulled it out of my head, and I drove to any of the offices like Fish and Wildlife, National Parks, who had the ability to hire within instead of going through Washington to find out if you could get a job. So I interviewed for 5 jobs. I got all 5 of them, and I had to choose what I wanted to do.
How wonderful.
Yeah. So I went to work. They sent me to IBM school, went to work on one of the first big computers called a Mag Card 2, magnetic cards that were slipped into this box. And I did all the typing and proofreading and all of that for the engineers and so forth who worked in that department. Well, there were 3 men that I was very intrigued by a position that they were offered by Saudi Arabia. The deal was made in Washington, and that our office, which was a field office in Denver, would handle that. So the woman that was the one that took my place in the beginning, didn't take my place, but she was there in the beginning, got a promotion and moved upstairs. And they were interviewing for the position. And all my friends knew when I was being interviewed, they were standing outside the door with paper cups against the listening to the interview. So I got the job. And it was planning, design, and construction for Saudi
Fascinating.
Arabia's first national park.
Did you travel
Yeah.
there at all?
No, right at the time they were going to allow women, we completed the project. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
How
So,
quirky. Jeez.
but I dealt with the Saudis when they came to the United States, which was quite interesting
No doubt. No doubt.
because they had specific rules and regulations when they were in their home country. Here, off came the Gutra, on went the jeans and polos, and they went out and had fun. So,
It's just an irony of how incredibly antiquated, unfair, and
Yeah.
problematic women's lives are in a
Yeah.
country where the differences are so clearly
Oh,
defined. And
absolutely.
it's just one of the head scratchers of growing up in the Western world.
Yeah, true.
Okay,
Oh, that
that's a
is our
great job.
daughter graduating from high school. And this was
Wow,
here in Florida.
outstanding. Oh, look at the foliage behind you.
Yeah. The palm trees, and those are, I don't even remember what those are called. Yeah. So out in our backyard, and oh, that's Colorado. And that is our campsite where we were taken on our way there, both my husband and myself. Yeah,
Do
Kathy did
you,
the work on it.
when you first got together, I'm guessing he had no similar experiences and no knowledge of this phenomena. It's something that happens with couples where one person is an experiencer and you fall in love with somebody who falls in love with you who is not. How did you begin to breach what for some people is an almost impossible chasm of understanding?
Well, I still am not sure how well he listened, but his mother was very interested in UFOs. And so was my mom because of what I had experienced.
Of
So they
course.
used to go to lectures and all those kinds of things themselves. And then Ed's family moved to Titusville, where his stepdad was going to work at the Cape. I'm going to tell a real interesting story that I've not told before about that.
Please.
Um, so, my husband didn't pay a lot of attention to it. He just kind of went about what you do as a kid and a teenager, and he was not taken. He used to play with all kinds of things that his stepdad would bring home, that he probably shouldn't have because the kids put together their own little rockets and things like that, being in Titusville. However, his stepdad told me after I met him that they were putting together one of the first rockets, not manned, but they were getting prepared to send something living up. And they were not figuring out this last piece of equipment that they needed to get the rocket off the gantry. They couldn't do it, and they were given a deadline. They knew what they needed, but they couldn't put it together, nor could they find it. And he didn't have a belief one way or the other. And they were told, okay, everybody go home. If you don't have this by tomorrow, they were going to shut down
Wow.
firing rockets from Cape Kennedy.
Yeah.
So he was the type that he was an engineer. He had to have something. It was driving him frantic. So when they went back the next day and they started to walk around, they went out to the gantry and there lay the piece of equipment.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Central Casting.
Yeah. And that's when he said, I know who put that there. And there were sightings of crafts the day that rocket took off, all around the top of it. So if you put 2 and 2 together.
Do you remember the first time that you became aware that what had happened to you since early childhood happened to other people? And there were even books discussing it. Well, there really wasn't much in terms of abduction research back in the day.
No.
But do you remember your first introduction to something beyond another person saying, I've had something like that happen, as opposed to something more formal, hearing about a conference or a researcher or a film or a book that brought this subject into a finer focus for you?
It was more people. If I brought up the subject and I basically said UFOs, unidentified, what did you think? And every once in a while, someone would say, oh, I have a story. And they would tell me the story. And so it would help because I knew I wasn't by myself. I wasn't alone. And I had met Dr. Romack, and the two of us kind of broached the subject when we were working on the hypnosis, because he used me for his test subject. And he said, what would you like to do? And I said, I want to quit smoking. I was a smoker. And so he did. He said, if I just say you're going to quit smoking, listen to this every night, and you will quit. He said, that's a Band-Aid. The Band-Aid will fall off, just like taking an aspirin. That will wear off, and you'll go right back to what you're doing. He said, I want to find out why you want to quit or you don't, and we're going to work through that. I had 22 reasons under hypnosis why I didn't want to quit. 22. It was bad.
Usually just, I like smoking works.
Yes, no, not me. And so he eliminated every one of those, and I walked out of his office a non-smoker.
And you've never smoked again?
No. Mm-mm.
In learning the skills involved, and, people still come up to me or rhetorically say, regressive hypnosis is not good because hypnotists will influence the person or they're out for their own reasons. And for me, it's really, the response is always, depending on the practitioner, their ethics, their intentions, their compassion, empathy, their desire to assist you, that's everything. You can't dismiss the discipline because they're irresponsible practitioners or, somebody that doesn't operate according to the way that you think it should be done. It's really all about the individual. And I was curious to know, as you developed your skills and became more involved in working with people for different reasons, be it to stop smoking, past life regressions, pain management, different reasons, was there something different about the feel or the quality or the experience, either for you as the practitioner, or do you think for the individual, when you were dealing with a being taken experience rather than wanting to stop smoking?
There's a big difference. I think that the method that I use is a forensic regressive type hypnosis, where you give no clues to that individual that you're working with. They're going to have to come up with their own answers. So you ask questions in such a way that you're giving nothing away.
Right.
And that's your best bet when it comes to not wanting to please the person doing the hypnosis, and so making up all of this stuff that isn't factual. So you begin to learn and become aware of who a person is and what they're really looking for, and using that method, it makes a big difference.
You know, I was regressed twice, once by Bud Hopkins and
Oh.
once by an earlier mentor. Pete Mazzola was a tough,
Okay.
no-nonsense New York City police detective,
Mm.
Italian-American, Brooklyn, tough guy, and very thorough and very highly decorated cop at the same time, a crack UFO investigator. And to share a little story with you and our viewers,
Mm.
Pete was trained to do hypnotic regression. The tab was picked up by the NYPD because up until then they had nobody in the department that, and this would have been probably the mid 70s or earlier, who was trained to do hypnotic regression for criminal investigation. And he shared some stories with me. One about breaking a major murder case that made the news big time. The Bolshoi Ballet was in America beginning a national tour. And this
Mhm.
is, again, probably mid 70s or a little earlier than that, when, we were in the Cold War, and these people were, of course, artists traveling together and
Mhm.
doing performances all around the country, or would be. But their first stop was New York City, and a ballet that was done in Lincoln Center, most appropriate. And a young violinist, and it's funny, you know how names stick in your head. Her
Mhm.
name was Helen Agnes Mintix,
My.
and she was 20 years old, and she was found dead on the roof of Lincoln Center's performing space for ballet.
Wow.
There was immediate concern, of course, for obvious reasons, but the State Department, the NYPD, um, if there was a murderer in the Bolshoi, they were about to begin a national tour, and they all were on diplomatic passports. So they needed to crack this case and do it quickly. And Pete, working with a translator, Russian to English, of course, and a police artist, met with one person after another in the Bolshoi, one person after another, in the regular staff, and a young ballerina under hypnosis remembered going up in the elevator one floor with Mintix and a man. And again, the hypnotist working with the translator, working with the police artist, created this image. And Pete took the image and went to the stage manager
Mhm.
and said, "Does this man look familiar to you?" He said, "That's Craig Crimmins. He's a stagehand. Dad and granddad were too. He's
Oh.
over there." And Pete
Oh.
walks up to him with two uniforms and just holds up the drawing. And he said, the guy looked at him and said, "Don't hurt me." And they broke the case right there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
How about that?
That's amazing.
But
Um,
he and Bud hypnotized me. And before we go to break, I'll just describe, that people experience hypnotic regression in very different ways. I was very fortunate in that I was offered this opportunity by two respected practitioners, and I waited a year or so. I didn't do it till I was ready with either of them. I don't know if it was part of the result, but I went back to being 14 years old again when my sister and I had this sighting.
uh-huh.
Denise, I was 14. I knew that
Oh.
I could break the spell. I could open my eyes or tell myself what was really going on. I didn't want anything to break this. I could smell the grass. I was using phrases, recorded that I would never have used as an adult. It was almost ecstatic. And there came a point after Helen and I had our event when I walked into the kitchen, and it was either Pete or Bud doing the hypnotic regression. And there was my mom in right profile at the stove. I think to this day she was making grilled cheese sandwiches for us for lunch.
Okay.
And I looked at her and I said, quote unquote, and the same quote in both hypnotic regressions, not a word different. Mom, Helen and I just saw some things in the sky over the Parker's house that looked like flying saucers from the movies. Cut. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me. And I thought, she didn't remember when Helen and I discussed with her and my dad years later, but not feeling compelled to say anything. And I'm thinking in my mind at that time, this is the way grown-ups look at each other. The damage that could have been done if she had just said, oh, honey, you just thought, or whatever.
Yeah.
At that moment, though, whoever was hypnotizing me said, what time is it? I said, I don't know. They said, is there a clock in the kitchen? I said, yes. They said, where's the clock? I said, on the wall behind my mom, up to the right. Look at the clock. Okay. What time is it? 20 after 12.
Wow.
On that note, we have
Yes.
burned through our first hour, and we will be back at 8 o'clock sharp, about 3.5 minutes from now. Please stay and return with us.
The UNX Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Kathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com. The new book, How to Research The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from UNX Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
And we are back. My special guest, Denise Stoner, is joining me tonight from Florida. And welcome back, Denise. I hope you had a wonderful break.
I did, just relaxing. Yeah, and thinking of a couple things that we have not discussed that I thought I would bring up.
Please.
Our memories of these things, like you just told your story in such a fantastic way, and this can really happen for other people, and they can decide for themselves what happened to me. Was it real? They find out most of the time that it is when they have the memory return as you did, to know where that clock was in the kitchen. I mean, that's amazing, that it worked that well for you. But what I wanted to bring up was something that I've been kind of hashing over for a while to try and see how can I solve this by normal means. But I don't think I can.
Yeah.
The home, the second home, the one that my dad built in Connecticut, in Wethersfield for us, of course, I was taken from there. I have a couple of very good friends whose names I cannot disclose right now. They need to be kind of protected. Told me that they had come to find me a few years ago, that they were sent to find me. I do not have the whole story, but they're very unusual, and very kind and very different. And moving forward from that, they said to me, did you have braids, and bangs as a little girl? Did you have this and that? And was your little ET about your height at age 7 to 8? And then we think we see you with that little ET, and his hand is on your forehead. And I said, where was this? And they've told me they were looking in the window from my home in Connecticut, in Wethersfield. And the thing is, that backyard, in the back of that home, there has never been a picture taken of it, and they describe it to a T. They describe where I was standing and what was happening, and yet they're not giving me. How are they getting that information? Where is it coming from? Because it's true. I remember standing in that window with the ET, with his hand on my forehead, and then he disappeared. And our bedrooms in that home were very large. 2 bedrooms only upstairs on either side, bathroom in the center. But the beds, when you entered the room, were against the wall. And then you had dressers in our closets, and then quite a long extension where my parents put a sofa sleeper in our bedroom in case we had guests and they would come and sleep in our room.
Sure.
We had a big toy chest and dormer windows. And the outside, the only pictures ever taken were ones of the back fence. But these individuals can describe what I looked like, the color of my hair, where I was standing. They described the windows.
2 questions come to my mind. One is, do you feel these individuals were fully human? And whether or not that's the case, do you think that from what you know about remote viewing, that some of that technique may have been employed to pin down these very hyper-specific memories and images?
My own personal feeling is they're not fully from here. My own personal feeling, and my relationship with them is so different from with anybody else. And I've asked them, how did you know that? We saw you. And I said, were you outside the window? Yes.
In our work, and referring now specifically to so much research and investigation, meetings with interviews, background work that you've done with Kathleen Marden over the years, who certainly has a bona fide background in this area, we deal with the reality that there are beings that are part us, part them. I don't know about you, but when this concept was first introduced to me, which was, I don't know, 2 years or so into starting to work with Bud, and I certainly had an open mind coming into it based on my sister's experience, etc.
Yes.
But it absolutely freaked me out. The possibility that this could be going on was, for me, intellectually unacceptable. I appreciated that it might be true, but that for now, thank you very much. I've got other things to do. Let me reflect back on this.
Mm-hmm.
Then you are forced to consider our scientific behavior with other species and things that we can routinely do now with other types of life forms, beings, animals, humans, that it's not such a stretch. You can create a hybrid of a fruit by knowing how to cut the branches right and insert one in another and bind it properly. The basis for this is there. And I think it was one particular case with Bud of a woman who would visit from the Midwest who had such an extensive history and so well documented that that case allowed me to walk through that door to a degree and accept that this was part of what was going on, or at least seemed to be, and that, as we say, reality doesn't care what we believe. And if we have a problem with it, that's what we have. We have a problem with it.
True. So working with Bud, you have become more open-minded?
Yeah, I had to. It's one thing to read a document, to listen to a tape, to look at the results of a scientific test establishing that organic material has been some way changed. And as you know, a lot of people put down witness testimony, particularly when it comes to this subject, because I can dismiss it that much easier. You're crazy, and this proves it. That's my scientific work for the moment.
Right.
As opposed to, if this is going on, I understand why I'm having so much problem processing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, even at this moment in time, when the disclosure process is continuing along at a good clip in a manner that a decade ago, I'm not even sure you and I would have accepted as possible, that the ridicule factor of taking this phenomena seriously has been winnowed down to such a point that you don't necessarily risk your career as a scientist, an academic, an attorney, a professional,
Right.
by saying, I take this subject seriously and I have some experience or have seen it. In fact, for me, the mantra is, every year, more and more people care less and less what other people think about what they think about this subject. And that was never the way it was. You had your small group to talk to. This idea, though, of hybrids, there's no real other word for it, is fascinating in that even now, when we have well-known elected officials talking about, back engineering and different life forms and whistleblowers, that abduction, missing pregnancies, and hybrids are all still seen and rigorously as outsider subjects. It's okay to have as many sighting reports or really cool documentaries, that are running right now, some absolutely superb, dealing with the more mainstream aspects of this phenomena and the subject and its implications. But once you get into the area of abduction, hybrids, and missing pregnancies, a wall comes down. And I believe that there are, among the folks that still move the chess pieces, this is rigorous, that even more now than before, these are areas you want to steer the public away from. And there's plenty to look at and, be excited about. It's entertainment for some people. The fact that you can just go on the internet now and there are all these personalities and groups and, individuals doing work and famous broadcasters. And now, of course, this week, yet one more interesting visual revelation in terms of this missile seeming to strike something that isn't ours and bounce off, and merrily the thing continues its way along.
And we're given little bits and pieces of things, and to try to connect them is virtually impossible presently. Where does that fit? What does it fit with? The how and why of things. And then you bring your hybrids, and then you bring the possibility that they're living among us, and on and on and on, the infinitum. And we have not been able to fit the pieces together in any kind of box.
In discussions of disclosure, I'm somewhat reticent in one aspect. When I first got involved in this subject, it was completely as an obsessive person. And I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted to know the answers and, damn the consequences, and power to the people. And we have the right to know this. And over the decades, just become more circumspect about it. But the challenges of how do you go forward to a world public and say, it's my solemn responsibility to share with you. All the world leaders may be timing it together. We are not alone, and we have been not telling you the truth about all these years. That's major. But how do you dig half a hole? How do you avoid them saying,
yes,
there's these other aspects of it that you might want to, and not having the population of a good part of the world freak the heck out. And, thinking about where America is at this moment in such a sadly divisive way, where, half of us are really aware of the other half to a degree or worse, and where firearms are readily available. And I use this example only because if it was just put out there, that there are hybrids, there are half humans, half aliens that are here. We're not sure their intentions, but we have established that as a scientific fact. There's going to be some Yahoo that says, that guy across the floor that lives in the apartment there, I've had my eye on him. He's, really light hair. He doesn't talk much. I once looked in his apartment. He's got UFO books in there. I think that bastard's from Mars. And, I'm going to do the world a favor here, and somebody's going to get shot.
Yeah,
it's kind of the American way. And again, how I'm being light here about a subject that's very serious, but it's not a question you and I can answer, but to just go forward for all of us to consider, how do you manage the disclosure process in a way that's manageable? I've heard people say, I'm ready. I know most of the people I know are ready. So let's do it. And my thought is, well, you may be, but there are an awful lot of people, probably the majority of people in the world, who are totally not ready. And I've gotten responses that range from, oh my gosh, I really hadn't thought about that, to screw them, they're going to find out anyway. So, have a couple of bad nights, but I am ready and let's go.
Boy, but to spoon feed little bits of information, what is the right way? What's the proper way? That's not. But dumping it all down out of that bucket that's in such a mix that we don't have answers for. That's not right. But it's there, and it's almost as if the visitors, if you want to call them that the visitors may think that we have developed as humans to the point where we can accept that now, and they're testing the waters by putting pressure on our governments to speak up, just to see what would happen. Like, how far have we evolved?
It's a very good point and well said. One wonders to what degree they want to move this process forward, or that it's not really a time-sensitive issue for them, although the reality is time-sensitive. It occurs to me occasionally that one of the very few subjects that people of completely opposite political viewpoints can agree on and hold and share passionately is this whole area. Before your former Congressman, Senator Marco Rubio became Secretary of State and more, he was, of course, very involved in this process. And I thought it was rather poignant that a certain amount of legislation was developed with one of my senators, Kirsten Gillibrand. And here you have two textbook examples of, an American conservative and American liberal who ideologically, and isn't that word interesting?
Yes.
So close. Yeah, ideologically, that I cannot help but think, coming together on this subject, recognizing each other's basic humanity and intelligence, that, like it or not, a basis for a friendship was formed right there.
Yes.
Who knows if it's progressed, but that's a terribly important aspect of this subject at this time. Again, if they want it to happen at a certain time, all they have to do is say, hey, we're here. And there are lots of ways to do that. I've used this as an example on another show, but do you remember in the 70s, there was a made-for-TV miniseries that was remade about 8 or 10 years ago about an alien invasion, so to say, called V.
Yes, I remember V. Yes.
The basics were, they come to Earth, the 80s ones. I didn't watch the one that was more recent. They all look like, blow-dried modeled with perfect hair and perfect skin and, absolutely amazing bodies in their skin-fitting suits. But they were not as they appeared to be. And, ate mice and us and didn't intend well for the Earth. And it broke down into every World War II resistance movie I had ever seen, and not very well.
Yeah.
But the premise, it opens with one of the most original and, for me, totally imaginative openings of any major piece of science fiction I've ever seen, read, or heard of. One day, everybody wakes up in the morning, looks out the window or turns on their TV and radio, and finds out, guess what? Over the 60 biggest cities in the world, 1 mile up, is a mothership 1 mile across.
Huge. Yes.
Game over.
Game over. And we don't have to, our government doesn't have to blame it on themselves. They could say, well, they just showed up. I mean, then what? But I think we cannot shove this back in the closet and get the door closed for too much longer. That's bulging at this point.
I think that process is being aided by the fact that now, since that pair of articles really defined that changing moment in the New York Times in December of 2017, some people feel the articles were the trigger. Others of us feel they were right there at the right moment and kind of emblemized it. But now that we're in this new era, there are a whole separate group of folks who 10 years ago had no interest in the subject,
No.
but once the interest was no longer frowned upon, and you find out that you have a friend or two that really takes this subject seriously, or you knew it beforehand, and I'm sure many people can cop to this, their attitude was, that's my friend Denise or Peter. They're really nice and I enjoy they're really into UFOs. And I love that phrase, into.
Into.
And yes, we were, and I guess you could say we are. But I've had folks who, it wouldn't surprise me if in an affectionate way, they had a little fun with me behind my back occasionally, and why not? It's a way to discharge appropriate nervousness if there's a truth to this, by thinking somebody that you know and don't think is insane takes it seriously. That's cause for concern right there. But that they now are confident in their curiosity. Yesterday, I had a Facebook message. I was catching up on email, but I heard that bing. It was from a Facebook friend who I refound several years ago. We went to elementary school together.
Wow.
And he was, I won't give you his name. He's a professional. And he was, he had just boarded a flight and started to chat with the guy next to him. And he had texted me, they're still on the ground. He says, "Do you know the name of such and such?" I said, "No," but I immediately looked it up while I'm back and forth with him. He said, "I'm sitting next to him on the plane, and one thing's leading to another, and we started to talk about UFOs. And he wrote a UFO book, and he knows who you are. Do you know who he is?" And I don't, but I'm reading about his book right now, and I thought, that wouldn't have happened.
No, it wouldn't.
And then just again a quick thank you, and isn't the world funny?
It is funny, and I've attempted to open up the door to some of this with people that I know that absolutely want nothing to do with it. So I start a conversation, and it really makes a difference on some individuals. Give me an example of some of your unexplained fears. Because some of that has something to do with them having had an event or a sighting or something. And whether they remember it or not, but they can't explain the fear. I had started with some that I have had, and I thought, boy, you are stupid. What have what's happening up here in your brain? I could never stand to have a wet, a plastic shower curtain. After you're done with your shower, if that touches me, I almost lose my mind. I can't stand it. And I couldn't figure out why. It's cold and clammy and odd feeling. And now I know that one of the entities that I was with felt like that.
Over the years of working with Bud and his networking with other colleagues, including Kathleen, a checklist emerged. And you're familiar with a lot of these quirky things that we respond to, or some people respond to, in a completely irrational way.
Yes.
Or fear-based when there seems to be no fear in triggering, obviously. At one point, I know that a particularly negative person who wanted to hurt the work published that list. Thankfully, very few people saw it. I don't think it really affected the research much, but at heart, well, it makes sense. And the list that I was familiar with was somewhere between 15, 18 different items. And 2, 3, 4, even 5 don't make it a difference. It's when you're dealing with 13 or 12 and you go over that list that things get wired up. Do you remember in the very courageous miniseries from like 1992 of Bud's book Intruders,
Mm-hmm.
which unfortunately was never remastered into a DVD. There's a terrible quality version on YouTube, but it still holds up.
Mm-hmm.
And the great Richard Crenna playing a
Oh,
character
yes.
based on Bud in part, with a little bit of John Mack thrown in, and the wonderful Mare Winningham, a brilliant character actress, playing Deb White Cabell, who I'm going to get to see in about 2 weeks. I'm speaking in Michigan
Oh,
at a conference that she is. I will send you your love
oh,
and best wishes.
yes, please do. Yes,
But there's that,
absolutely.
and I don't know if it's authentic, but there's that moment after an abduction experience that Mare Winningham's character is in the kitchen making breakfast, and they're not very distracted. The toast is starting to burn, and or it's about to, and she looks in the frying pan, and those two egg yolks are looking up at her. And I thought, holy shit! I had never thought of it, but that's a possible trigger.
Yep.
And one of the ones that fascinated me the most was, there is a location. It can be the most beautiful spot in a park that is just exquisite, that you will not go near. You will do everything possible to keep as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Or the classic, you overreact, to put it mildly, when you go into a dentist's office. And I
Yes.
remembered something my sister Helen had told me, and my trying to elicit a description from her of her conscious memories. This years before the term gray was in the lexicon, and it was that when I asked her to describe the whole process of being taken, walked through the hallway, on the table, returned, her words kind of caught me off guard at first, but she said it was like being in a well-run dentist's office.
Yes.
Very dispassionate, everything just so. And in a conversation like this, it's inevitable that we kind of circle and come back. That completely, the experience that people have of feelings that don't match the experience in overdrive. You are being taken by these non-human beings.
Yes.
You may be floated through a solid wall, or a ceiling, or a plate glass window, or a car roof.
Mm-hmm.
And we know repeatedly that the individual going through it is, oh, this is interesting. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
It's this mind-blowing, lackadaisical, so what reality that makes no sense, except bespeaks either an incredible ability of the human mind to shut down and be that way in a situation like that, or I think something that we've come to accept, they have the ability, whether it's technological or biological, bioenergetic, to create this scenario.
Yeah.
I think it's very kind on a certain level, because whether it's giving you an opportunity to not go into a total panic, or on their part, or it's usually not brought up as often because it's a less sexy, it's a less exotic kind of explanation, but our wonderful human mind's ability to turn down the volume or readjust the picture.
That's
And,
true.
that classic, that's not what I think it is, because that can't be, that's a 4-foot white owl. Yeah, that's what that is. That's a 4-foot white owl. Okay, I'm
Exactly.
cool with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can do that. I would have loved to have had a conversation with your sister about that remark on the dentist chair, because I think some of us carry something like that with us to the degree that, well, like the mashed potatoes in the movie where the actor was building. Mine was,
Richard Dreyfuss.
yes,
Yeah.
and mine was attempting to draw the chair. I would sit at the top of the stairs in the newest home in Connecticut, and I would get one of the bigger bobby pins of my mom's, and I would sit there, and in the very bottom corner, she was so upset with me many times because I didn't stop. On the bottom of the wallpaper, I would attempt to get that just right and etch the chair over and over again, knowing where I had been sitting in it, but not quite wanting to believe it, and
Wow.
saying the design is not quite right and I have to get it right. For years I did that. Yeah.
Wow. The closest thing I ever had happen to that was when my career as an artist derailed. This memory came back into my mind like a freight train after more than 14 years of it being completely, no, except for one ironic day, being completely repressed. And the reaction I had after my sister confirmed the story, and then hearing her account from memory of what being taken was for her, my intention, my desire, my only aim in life at that time and from childhood for professional goal was to be an artist. And I was certainly well on the way. And I would say overnight, but it wasn't overnight. It started immediately after I got off the phone. For weeks and then months, I really didn't do anything but drawings of UFOs. And when that kind of slipped away, just pages filled with ellipses, then pages filled with ellipses that were crossed out. I knew I needed help. This wasn't fun or romantic.
No.
I was very fortunate in finding a psychiatrist, Dr. Ellsworth F. Baker, who had several experiences of his own, sightings, one with Dr. Wilhelm Reich, whose first assistant he was for the last 11 years of Reich's life. And he helped me to normalize this and understand my sister and I weren't crazy. The world was, and that this was very real and it was important. But I tried to return. I'm going to be more serious about it, I think, this coming year, to getting back into that creative groove. But for the life of me, I was on automatic, and it wasn't, this would have been in the mid 70s, and it wasn't another half dozen years or so until the movie E.T. came out. Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Okay.
And Richard Dreyfuss's amazing obsessive performance on that aspect. Anyway.
And you don't even know really why you're doing it. You know, you have to. I knew I had this chair somewhere and I had to get that perfect. Never did. I still don't have it.
I never heard that permutation. And isn't that so logical that your mind can allow you to do that, and you've got a rationale, and you can be that obsessive without being in full contact of why.
True. That's how it was. Yeah.
In your life, and let's actually go back to some of these photos. We've got a great one of you and Ed. And tell us about this picture.
This was the head of the field office for National Park Service, and he was giving me my award, and there's a check attached to it, for my work with the Saudi Arabia team. I was just so thrilled, and I felt so good about it. Yeah, it was quite an audience watching myself, the other three, and what we had done, and to acknowledge what we had done.
And shortly thereafter, there was a celebration.
Well, now this one is
Mhm.
the United States Navy and my retirement lunch.
Oh, for gosh sakes.
Yep, yep.
Wow.
There were 13 of us, so there were several other tables,
Yeah.
and that we opted for an early out because they were going to begin to move us. I did not want to move to Mississippi. Thank you very much. My husband had a good job. My daughter was settled, and I wasn't going to go there. So they gave us that option that they would buy us out. So that was my retirement lunch.
And this is also from that.
Yes, that's the big boss upstairs. Myself and my husband, because they thanked him and thanked all the spouses for supporting their families in
Fabulous.
working. Yeah, yeah.
Um, there's some pictures out of sequence here, but I'd like to touch on them. There's this
Okay.
beautiful portrait of Ed's dad, and it looks like
Yes.
it's hand colored, as was the custom in many cases before color film was a reality.
Yes.
He's such a young man in this picture, but he looks so mature, and I wish I had that suit and tie.
Yeah.
No joke.
That is the future Dr. Edward Stoner, who had his own medical practice down
Uh,
here in Florida for years. He was born in Pennsylvania, and his mother was one of those lucky enough to escape from Germany with her life at age 15 or 16.
do you
I
know the
don't,
story? Do you know
she,
the story of how she got out?
yes, there were some people willing to sneak her. Um, there was a lot of involvement. As her family was losing, they owned hotels and restaurants. They were all wiped out. So family that remained there and survived. Years later, I would observe her packing up boxes that went through Canada to help those that were still there. And now the son, who became a doctor, she had to be so cautious here and had to deny who she was, or he would not have been accepted in medical school.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And this portrait in later life.
And that's Dr. Stoner, yeah, my father-in-law, who then became the medical director of what is now UCF.
Oh my.
As far as the medical end of it, he set up all of the boards who said yay or nay to those young individuals wanting to become doctors and go to school. He was there, we're going to accept you or we're not, and that type of thing. He was a prison doctor. He was the athletic doctor for the high schools. So he did a lot in his life. And guess who that is?
It's not a good picture, and some
No,
folks won't know the show, but
no.
the gentleman on the left is a actor named Robert Young,
Yeah.
who became America's doctor in a very popular television show in, I think, the late 50s, early 60s.
Yes. Dr. Marcus Welby. And that's my husband's dad.
Oh, what
Um,
fun.
it was fun. They had quite the meeting and the pictures, being taken and some cute stories exchanged. So
Hmm,
that was fun.
great. Now, we have a building here that is very impressive. What is this home?
This is in Pennsylvania, and it's a little town called Sayre. This was Ed's grandparents' home.
Wow.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to spend some time there. And this was his maternal grandparents. And on the far right side, there was another house in the back that they owned.
Yeah.
It was part of the property. Over on the right was his grandfather's optometric
Oh my
office. He
gosh.
was an eye doctor.
How
Um,
terrific.
yeah, I got my first pair of glasses from him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
this is a part of your life we have not discussed.
yeah.
How did you begin to become a scuba diver of all things?
When we left Colorado, I knew I was going to be homesick. I was just not sure how I was going to like the situation, but I was determined if I came here to Florida, I was going to take up scuba diving. And I became an instructor, a rescuer. And then I said, I've got to see what's in the aquifer. And this was part of my cave diving course.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful photo of you here.
That's in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Beautiful.
have only done this once, and it wasn't scuba diving, but it was in the Bahamas with a snorkel. And it's such a cliche, but you feel like you're in a National Geographic documentary. Your world is filled with these absolutely courageous, curious fish checking
Yes.
you out. And my experience was almost giddy as a kid. You're having so much fun. It almost seems impossible. And of course, with climate change right now and global warming, one of the canaries in the coal mine is these fragile coral reefs all over the world, which
Yeah.
we are losing. We are losing.
We are losing. And on top of that, the individuals who are not trained in scuba properly, they don't realize is that one fin brushing over a piece of coral kills it. It's dead. So we need to make people more aware of all kinds of things, not just that. But can we cause our little oasis, the Earth, survive? I don't know.
Well said. Moving along in your narrative,
Oh,
we
yeah.
now move into the business world.
The business world, yes. When the Navy bought us out and we retired, we didn't retire because I used my buyout to help us to begin, which my husband had been in floor covering for so many years, probably almost 40 altogether. So this was our store that we purchased the empty building and set it all up.
Wow.
For several years until my husband was smart enough to say, uh-oh, I see something going on with the economy,
Oh boy.
and we better think about selling. So we did.
At the
And
right moment.
at the right moment. Yeah. Yeah. That's our sailboat
Yeah.
that we purchased when we moved down here and used it a lot. We're just water bugs. So
I never heard that term. That's wonderful. I mean, I've heard the, but never. That's great.
yeah.
Denise, when did you kind of cross that line of saying to yourself, these things are happening to me. These things are definitely happening to other people. I have a more than full life right now in terms of family, career, work, but I need to step into this work. Was it through or with Kathleen Marden or on your own and then later connecting with her?
I was already holding meetings. I had joined MUFON, and here comes this little lady through the door. When I was going to hold a meeting, the door opened and I thought, no, that can't be who I think it is. Well, it was. She had moved here
That's
from
right.
New England, and
New Hampshire.
she wanted to find out who was holding a meeting and decided to come and came to everyone after that. So I did not introduce her. I was afraid that she wanted to remain anonymous. So I
Sure.
just kept looking at her like, should I say something? Should I not? And she let me go with that. So, but I spoke to her and told her only one of my events, and she asked if I would be willing to have her investigate my cases.
Bravo. Well, nobody better. And a moment here from a few years ago. This was the speakers for that year for the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO Conference and Festival, which we just had a week and a half ago. And another great lineup. In fact, the most compelling presentation. And this was the 60th anniversary of the incident at Exeter. So it was a pretty big deal. And Charlie Foltz was able to come. Jim Weiner was not. It was great to see Charlie again and spend time with him. And he's now walking with a cane, not having a good time with it. But you know Charlie, I mean, he's got an incredible sense of humor and joie de vivre, and a brilliant storyteller. And we got to spend some extra time together. And I'm saying this to the audience now, if you're on Facebook, you can go to my page and find this. Every year, the talks at the Exeter UFO Festival and Conference are recorded by Exeter Television, Exeter Public TV, and given a little bit of time, they use all of these presentations as part of their programming. And so Charlie's was just released today, and you can go to my Facebook page and scroll down a few pictures and click on it. And I highly recommend it if you've never attended a UFO lecture, but particularly about the subject of abductions. Charlie and Jim's brother, and I forget the fourth guy's name at the moment.
Yeah.
They were taken when they were wilderness canoeing in Maine from their canoes. And all four of them were artists of different sorts. Their work changed after the fact, not like mine, but it changed. Charlie went from, kind of really classic sort of landscapes to being a medical illustrator, which is a very hyper-specific craft that is still necessary, even with, the level of photography today. Jim, a brilliant ceramic artist, and his work changed completely as well. But it's one of those rare presentations where, because they are who they are, they composed it mostly of their drawings and paintings. And, there's some photographs in there, but Charlie sat on the stage and he gave his presentation. I'm a very proud co-producer of this event for some years now, and I also MC it. But with my background in theater management in New York, you're always, you're a mother hen. You're looking out for what could go wrong. And Charlie started to speak, and I was in the room, but standing just behind the last row. And I was so caught up in his talk, and you could hear a pin drop, literally, that it was some minutes before I turned around. That wonderful old town hall was built in 1850.
Oh, yes.
Abraham Lincoln spoke there. It has a lot of character. And it's all movable seating. But at a certain point, I turned around just to take a look behind me. And sometimes, if it's a really popular lecture, there are some people standing, but there's plenty of seating as a rule. The crowd was like 5 deep. There were easily 50, 60 people standing behind me. And I realized that we were probably in violation of the fire regulations. You do a quick look around. I wasn't going to stop it, but I was just going to stay aware of it. And when Charlie finished, and it wasn't anything planned, it just happened like that, everybody stood up and gave him a
Oh,
standing ovation. It went on, I'm not exaggerating, a minute or 2 minutes. It was
wow.
major. He was completely floored, but it was warranted. And if you want an introduction to this subject that's as heartfelt and visceral and well documented as it can be, also with this unique aspect, um, go to my Facebook page and scroll down again, a page or two, and you will see Charlie's talk right there. You can also go to Exeter or Exeter, New Hampshire TV and find it, and the rest of the talks will be added over the next week or so, so I understand. But whoa, absolutely first rate.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
here's a familiar.
Oh, there's Kathleen, and there is myself, Madeline Tobias, and Ann Castle on the left.
It's a great shot of you gals.
Yeah. Girlfriend's up to no good.
The best way to be. Yeah. And is what can you say about Stanton T. Friedman, except that he was absolutely remarkable and he touched all of our lives in absolutely sensational ways. One of my favorite memories of Stan and Kathleen together was it was in Florida, the last MUFON symposium there, maybe it was half a dozen years ago or more. And I am seated, and I was heading with Kathleen and Stan back to their place, Kathy's place.
I was there too. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and on the way there, several hours driving, we were hungry and we stopped.
Yes.
And it happened to be my birthday. And Stan and Kathleen bought me dinner. And I thought, here I am sitting in this Mexican restaurant in Florida with two people. You folks don't know who they are, but if you did, you might choke on your tamale. And just always having that association. And boy, what a wonderful place, Kathy.
And wasn't that a wonderful time? And Stan would not allow us to sit together, Kathleen and I. He had to be in the middle. And I said, Stan, but how about if I sit over there? No. I am the thorn between two roses, and that's the way it must be. I'll never forget that statement.
That's perfect.
Isn't that something?
Truly an inspiration to all of us. I first heard Stan speak, and it's very fresh in my mind right now because I'm working on updating a talk I'm going to be giving at a conference on the 20th, where in 1978, Lee Spiegel, who went on to become a wonderful journalist, and we lost a few years ago to cancer. Lee was a guy who had come to New York to become a folk singer, grew up in New Hampshire, and had an experience with some friends where a triangular-shaped UFO shot a blue beam of light down to the ground right next to them. And almost needless to say, Lee's career as a folk singer went the same way my career as a painter went. And in 1978, there was this very special event at the United Nations where Sir Eric Gary, the Prime Minister of the Caribbean country of Grenada, sponsored a motion to establish a permanent study committee on the subject of UFOs. It actually passed, but then was allowed to die in committee. But he was the one, as a 20-something-year-old, who got the bee in his bonnet to contact this leader of a very small world country who he knew took the subject seriously and get on his case to sponsor an event, which he did. And then Lee went out and secured the services of Stan, astronaut Gordon Cooper, Jacques Vallée, and a Lieutenant Colonel Coyne, whose helicopter had been pulled up about 1,800 feet when he was in a dive over Ohio, and Jacques Millet, and Dr. Hynek. And I heard them all speak at the United Nations 3 years before I ever went to a UFO conference.
Oh my.
But it was 10 years before I actually made any real contact with Stan, and he became not just a friend, but a mentor.
Right.
And that was after Philip Klass had taken me and my sister to task in his book, UFO Abductions, A Dangerous Game. And I was fuming in a green room waiting to go on TV, and I looked up, and there's Stanton Friedman looking at me with a furrowed brow. And as you know, Stanton could furrow his brow better than most human beings.
Yep.
What's wrong? Oh, nothing. No, here's Stanton Friedman. And I tell him my story of woe that interviewed me and, dismissed our event as two children with overactive imaginations. And he's listening the whole time, looking very grave. And I finish my story, and he goes, and sticks out his hand. And I'm wondering what? He goes, congratulations, you're nobody in this work till you've been attacked by Phil. I thought,
yes.
All of a sudden I was having a good experience instead of a bad one.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make it that way. Yeah.
Denise,
oh, boy.
What are you working on right now?
Well, I'm still working with people who are willing to have me use hypnosis on them. If they believe in a past life, let's go back. Have they had any events occurring as far as abduction or sightings during those past lives? What's important about it to you? And I'm working on that and the consciousness of it all.
How can folks get in touch with you if they want to speak with you or meet with you?
They would just send me an email. I always respond to everyone. DM Stoner, the number 1 at gmail.com.
DM Stoner, number 1 at gmail.com.
Correct.
Denise, we have to call it a night. I hate to say. I love you. I miss you. I hope that our paths cross again soon in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
Please
love
send
you too.
my love to Ed and to your daughter, and let us keep in touch a little more than usual. And
Absolutely.
A giant hug to you, my dear.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful evening.
Yeah, just went too fast. We'll come back soon.
All right.
For now.
Bye.